Welcome along, fellow time travelers and strange historians. This time around, we're going to check out some of my favorite images associated with real estate acquired as a result of John Lennon's incredible wealth. This is part 2. You're going to see some really cool snaps, some of which you may have never seen before. Before I begin, please like and share the show and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Now please join me around the campfire. In addition to John and Yoko's numerous massive apartments in the Dakota apartment building, as well as his mansions in upstate New York, Long Island, and Palm Beach, John and Yoko also owned historic plantations in Virginia. That's because in early 1980, Jim Carter, a real estate agent based in Whitestone, Virginia, received a phone inquiry at his office from a New York business manager. The manager was searching for a countryside estate on behalf of a confidential client. Because he didn't cover that area, Jim relayed this request to his son Jimmy, who worked in their Gloucester branch. Understanding the urgency conveyed by the caller, Jimmy expedited the dispatch of property listings to New York through a courier service. Within a mere 2 days, the manager called back to arrange a visit for his clients. He revealed them to be Mr. and Mrs. Lennon from New York City, who had planned to come by the following Friday. The Lennons expressed interest in 2 estates, Poplar Grove, an elegant residence in Matthews County dating back to 1770, and Upper Shirley, a historic property situated along the James River near Richmond. Upon inquiring about accommodations, the manager received a recommendation from Jimmy that the Lennons should consider staying at the Williamsburg Inn, located approximately 40 minutes westward. The Williamsburg Inn is pretty awesome. It was constructed in 1937 under the personal supervision of John D. Rockefeller Jr., and it incorporated unprecedented luxuries for its era, including private bathrooms and air conditioning. This establishment had hosted distinguished guests, among them Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, who stayed there during the 350th anniversary of Jamestown in 1957. Given its history of accommodating notable figures, it was deemed an appropriate choice for the Lennons. John and Yoko then embarked on their journey from Penn Station in New York to Washington, D.C. by train. Yes, you heard that right. John and Yoko went to Penn Station in New York, got on a train, and traveled to Washington, D.C. And that's probably because they could comfortably get there in less than 3 hours. Following their arrival, they arranged for a limousine to transport them on a 2.5-hour journey to Gloucester, Virginia. Upon reaching his office around midday, Jimmy dispatched his secretary to what was once Morgan's drugstore to pick up sandwiches from the lunch counter. Without speaking to any of the others, John and Yoko then went into the rear section of the real estate office to eat their lunch. Post-lunch, John and Yoko proceeded in their limousine, with Jimmy, to Poplar Grove, a sprawling 22-acre estate with a river vista. Situated in Matthews, Virginia, this mansion was envisioned as a tranquil hideaway for the couple, a contrast to the frenetic pace of New York City. The property boasts an elegant 18th century mansion, framed by ancient trees, expansive lawns, and the East River in the distance. The 18th century mansion is adorned with an Ionic order portico that was added later. In 1833, the estate was the birthplace of Captain Sally Louisa Tompkins, who was a renowned Confederate officer, who deserves to have her very own statue. That is because Miss Tompkins is remembered for her compassionate work as a nurse and philanthropist, who holds the distinction of being the first woman officially incorporated into an American army. It is widely held that she was the sole woman to receive a formal commission in the Confederate Army. Her legacy shines brightest for personally funding a hospital in Richmond, Virginia, dedicated to caring for the American Civil War's wounded soldiers. Notably, the hospital under her management reported the lowest mortality rate among all, both Union and Confederate. She earned the venerable title Angel of the Confederacy for her dedication and service. John and Yoko really loved Poplar Grove, despite its need for renovations. John was fascinated by the property's historic tide mill, the sole remaining example in Virginia that is still operational today. This 2-story structure, erected post-Civil War, stands on a strip of land dividing a lagoon from the bay, replacing a previous mill rumored to have milled corn for General George Washington's forces. John expressed interest in converting the mill into a recording studio. The oldest part of the miller's house, dating back to around 1770, is a quaint gambrel roof cottage integrated into the current larger structure. Without posing many questions, and after spending an hour on the estate, they made their way back to Gloucester, where they dropped Jimmy off at his office, and their limousine brought him to the Williamsburg Inn. John and Yoko also acquired Auburn Plantation, which is nestled at 11 Old Auburn Road in Matthews County. The federal-style mansion, which stands 3 stories tall over a basement, was built between 1803 and 1824. It is set within a sprawling 31-acre estate adorned with vast lawns and gardens. The property boasts 1,900 feet of riverfront along the North River, leading into the Chesapeake Bay, with its land comprising approximately half forest, 30% arable land, and the remainder dedicated to landscaped areas. Now here's where things get really interesting. The estate is rumored to be haunted. Originally constructed for Dr. Henry Wythe Tabb by his father, Philip Tabb, Dr. Tabb, who had outlived 2 wives and was married to his third, faced a devastating tragedy when his daughter, Mary Eliza Tabb, tragically fell down the foyer staircase on her wedding day. Discovered by Dr. Tabb following the sound of a terrible crash, Mary Eliza succumbed to her injuries later that day. In remembrance, the family initiated a tradition where Mary's white satin wedding slippers were to stay within the house, handed down through generations of the Tabb family. However, Yoko Ono, influenced by her strong superstitious beliefs, refused to keep the slippers in the home. In fact, she went as far as having the house exorcised and having the basement filled up with sand, which she believed would deter spirits, especially the spirit of Mary Eliza. Whether or not filling the basement up with sand ever worked, John Lennon certainly never found out. That is because after purchasing their southern plantations, John Lennon never returned. In the aftermath of John Lennon's untimely death in 1980, Yoko Ono sold Poplar Grove for $580,000 and donated the proceeds, about $200,000, to New Beginnings Boys Home. She also sold Auburn Plantation. So what do you think of John and Yoko's Virginia mansions? If you were rolling in dough, would you live in one of them? You know I would. What do you think about filling up a basement with sand? Do you think that works to keep spirits away? By the way, I do not know who took some of the images that I've shown in the show, so if you do, will you kindly let me know so I can respectfully give them the credit they deserve. At this point, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this time travel adventure to check out some of my favorite images of John Lennon's Virginia plantations. Kindly remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because there will be more shows like this one, and I hope you check those out too. Please check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Specifically, I'd really appreciate it if you could become a member of my channel and or join me on Patreon. You could also leave a super thanks in the comments below. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals and please don't eat them. They don't like that. Remember, for the benefit of compassion for all living things and their own health, brilliant people throughout history chose a plant-based diet. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog, or both. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.